What's up, guys? So today we're going to talk about sled training. Sled training is a super effective strength training modality that you can do anytime or anywhere if you have a setup at your home like I'm going to show you today. For those wanting to be more backcountry ready for backcountry hunting, both the climbing up and the coming down. A lot of people forget just how much that down can beat you up. A sled, whether it be a plate-loaded sled like many people will see in a gym or in a turf setup, or as I'm going to show you today, the one I use at home, which is super effective, easy to set up, it's cheap, and it's still going to give you those same strength training adaptations that you need to be more physically and ultimately more mentally prepared for those backcountry hunting situations. All right, guys, so here's my setup. I've got, we call a jet sled. Now, this is made by a company called Jet Sled. You can pick these up online, typically at your local hardware store. It's just a heavy-duty plastic sled with these higher sides so that stuff doesn't fall out of it. Side note, these work really well to help you drag animals out of the backcountry. You will have to go back out to your truck to get the sled and then go back in with it, but there's certainly situations where that can be helpful. So I've got sandbags in here. So all I'm doing is throwing those bags in. We're at about 150 pounds. Now I have in my backyard here a little bit of a slope up and down. I adjust when I'm doing a backwards drag, okay, which would be pulling with the sled behind me. Where I'm facing the sled, and the sled is always going to be behind you in a drag. But where I'm facing the sled, there I'm going to load up with a little bit more, okay? Now when I'm doing a forward drag, typically, just because of being on the grass, you're going to notice a little more slip, right? So there I'll lighten it up. And also the angles, okay, don't put you in quite as much of a mechanical advantage. So in that situation, you might find yourself dropping as well. If you're pulling in a driveway or on other surfaces, you're going to have to adjust based on, the different resistance, longer grass, shorter grass. My sled's a little beat up. It's kind of beat up in the rear, so it's dragging a little bit more. But you'll find kind of the what resistance is needed for you to also determine or to go along with what type of training session you're doing. If you're doing something that's going to require you to go longer distances or time frames, there you might be dropping those loads down, okay, so that you can achieve that steady state or continuous movement. Now, if you're doing shorter, heavier, same, or you could think about in weight room terms, if you're doing heavy loads with shorter reps, okay, or fewer reps, that's going to be more of your heavy loading, right? Your heavy strength training versus if you're doing more endurance strength or strength endurance, you would have lighter loads and higher repetitions. It's no different here, okay? So make sure that you're set up accordingly. All right, now you don't need anything fancy to hook up to a sled. If you're dragging a plastic sled on grass or some other surface that allows for some slide there, all I've got, this is actually a drag stick that I used to drag a buck out this year that was laying around the garage. I hooked up some paracord and I've got 2 carabiners here. The reason I use 2 is because they're kind of cheapos. I just don't want to be falling on my ass when I'm pulling it. From there, I've just got a basic nylon rope, okay, and that's tied to the corners of the sled. I did have another set of ropes hooked up on the rear so that I could just go down and back without spinning the sled. Got taken off. I'll certainly get that back on there eventually here. But again, this is just a stick. This is a striped maple, maybe 1.5 inches in diameter, and that works just fine for hauling around the weight that I'm going to show you guys today. All right, so we're going to start with a reverse drag. Now, reverse drag, I'm facing the sled, okay, and my back is facing the direction that I'm traveling. A forward drag would be here, okay, where I'm facing away from the sled as I'm dragging. So a reverse drag, I hold on here, I'm going to kind of bend at the waist, all right? You don't want to be hunched over, right? Because that takes the load away from loading the hips, but also primarily the knee. This is a very quad dominant movement, right? And it's going to put more of it into the shoulders and the back. From there, I'm going to keep my shoulders square, okay, as I extend my knee, right? So I'm extending that knee as I'm pushing the ground away from me. Now, a reverse drag, it's important to understand, that's going to provide more transfer to coming downhill. That's what we consider a deceleratory strength training movement. The reason for that is that my center of mass is behind the contact point. Okay, it's very simple. If you think about acceleration, somebody taking off or running, okay, I'm making contact here, down and kind of below and behind me to propel my center of mass forward. Okay, if I'm decelerating, think about the same runner coming running in, or doesn't matter if it's sport or, again, like I'm coming downhill. Okay, I'm going to make contact out in front of me, right? I'm traveling this direction. I have to apply braking forces, deceleration, heel contact first, just like in a reverse drag, okay? Then I go into flexion, right, to decelerate me. It's just applying brakes to the ground, all right? So reverse drag, like I just showed you there, that's going to be deceleration. Those of you that really struggle with coming downhill, like that type of strength, you feel like, man, you really beat up those quads in those downhill situations, especially if you've got weight on your back or even just added clothing. You're going to want to be incorporating more reverse drags into your training rather than the forward drag, which I'm going to show you next. That's going to be more of your uphill training, your acceleratory or propulsive type of strength training movement. All right, so now a forward drag. This is going to be with the sled behind me. Okay, again, it's always behind us, but I'm facing forward. So I've got my hands back behind me. I'm leaning into it, which means that the weight is going to be towards my forefoot. Again, more like accelerating. It's propulsive. It's moving me forward, okay, while making contact on the front of the foot first. Okay, now if you're just walking along, sure, we're still propelling and potentially heel contact comes first. I roll over it. In the situation of going uphill or taking off in a sprint, that's where you're going to see more forefoot contact. I just want everybody to understand that that's the difference between a forward drag and a reverse drag. The other thing that's different is that because the load is behind us, okay, here, and I'm leaning into it and extending, like to propel me forward, I'm pushing and extending here. What that means is that you're getting more backside or posterior chain muscles involved in this movement. Whereas when I'm going backwards, reverse drag, right here, the things that are propelling me are more of the anterior chain, the quads, okay, the front of the leg. And again, those are the ones that you're going to need for coming downhill. So forward drag, I lean into it here, weights on the front of the foot, and I'm extending. You're going to feel your glutes fire, the hamstrings. I'm extending. You're going to feel a lot of the calf as well, okay, as you move that sled forward. So to recap that, you've got reverse drag, okay, here, right? That's going to be more of your decel, coming downhill strength. For the folks out there that need more help with their going up, that's going to be more here where the sled is behind me, okay? I'm pulling forward. You need them both, right? You want to train both. But I think everybody understands where they have, like where their weaknesses are and where their strengths are. We really want to make sure we're filling buckets that aren't being filled in our training, right? So like if you do a lot of uphill work, but you're not getting as much maybe of the hard, grueling, pounding downhill, maybe you're on a treadmill all the time or a stair climber or a fan bike, all great training modalities, all great things to train your legs, your lungs, your endurance, but you're not getting that strength that's needed for helping you coming downhill, for decelerating. You're maybe going to want more of that reverse drag. The folks that really struggle with going up and they need more of that, maybe you're adding in more forward sled drag action. All right, so this last movement I'm going to show you with a sled is what we call a sled yank. A situation where you might have to pull on something really explosively. There's this jerk action, okay, very similar to movements such as a clean and jerk, where I'm pulling a bar, right, and I'm getting this rapid, what we call triple extension. It's a very kinetic movement where I incorporate from the ground, or my foot, an ankle, all the way up through the entire kinetic chain. It's also a movement that beats guys up and potentially puts you in the hospital with spinal injuries, tears, etc., because they're heavy loads. For those of us here in the North Country, dragging bucks out of the big woods, potentially many miles back into the woods, you're pulling deer up over blowdowns and out of wet spots and uphill, and you're getting caught on things, and you're having to give it that yank to get it moving again. So incorporate that in your training. All right, you need to expose tissues to those types of stress so that you can not be just like seeing muscle tissue seeing something for the very first time. Okay, those sudden increases of volume, the intensity, and the type of stimulus, when all of a sudden you're seeing it for the first time in the woods, okay, lugging this animal out, you're potentially already fatigued, you're having to apply these yanking explosive patterns. That's a good opportunity to get hurt. Prepare for it. Practice how you play, okay, and be ready when you get into those types of situations. All right, so I'm loaded up a little lighter here, and I would recommend, if you've never done these, to start light. You want to drop down at your hips, okay? So I'm flexing at my hips first, my knees, my ankles, right? So that I can use those to help extend me, and then the upper body assists it. Okay, so I'm going to show you a good rep here. I drop down, I load up, pull it towards me, right? I finish up high. Again, similar to like a high pull with a bar. Now, where people will screw this up is that they won't load and create enough tension in the posterior chain so that when they start it, there's kind of like slack in the elbows, the shoulders, maybe in your rope. And when they pull it, it pulls them forward. So the weight wins. So it's good feedback there to know if you did it right or if you did it wrong. If you did it correctly, you'll start from the ground, right? You'll go all the way up through that triple extension, ankles, knees, and hips. They extend first, okay, hips first, and then the upper body finishes. So it looks like this. I'm getting good length, again, through my back. My shoulders are tight. There's good tension, but I'm not hunched over here. I'm in a good, strong position. Pull, all right, and then I finish up high. So it's hips first, hips, and then the upper body last. And if that sled is jerking you forward, okay, you know that potentially you did arms first, and you're trying to do it more with your upper body. You're not using those hips to initiate the movement. All right, guys, so I hope that you now have a better understanding of how you can incorporate sled training at home. Super simple, pretty cheap, and super effective form of training that if you're a backcountry athlete, you absolutely should be incorporating into your training. Guys, if you need help with your training, don't hesitate to click the link, reach out to us at Ridgeline Athlete. Whether you want to train with a team, preparing for your upcoming hunt or your next adventure, or if you're looking for individualized training, we've got you covered. All right, so click the link, head on over to our website, reach out to us. Be sure to set you up with a consultation. We'll get you started. In the meantime, guys, keep charging, subscribe, and share with others who might find value in the content. I look forward to seeing you on the next one.